some general stuff that we can do while we wait for him to come on. So let's do that. So we are on the record. Today is Friday, July 22nd. We're on the record at about 11:32 a.m. We're convening as the Local Control Advisory Board. We have some good updates to share that all of you should have gotten a memorandum from Natasha about that. But we'll do a quick roll call. I'll do some welcome remarks, hand it over to Ashia to give some welcome. We'll do a general overview about where we are in this process. And then hopefully we will be able to move it over to Michelle Schwerin and Brian Ashworth from St. Louis County. So I'm going to just run through as I've been doing the last few meetings just to see who's on. So obviously I'm here. Ashia Parker, I see. Good morning. Is Senator McCray on? Delegate Stephanie Smith. President Nick Mosby. I think I saw Nikki Thompson.
I'm on for Council President.
Super. I see City Solicitor Jim Shea.
I'm on.
Super. By chance, is Lisa Walden on? Commissioner Michael Harrison and or Andy Smullian. Come on in. I have no air in my office. Hey, hi. Thanks for the help. I appreciate it. Pardon me for that. Muncie Director Shantae Jackson.
I am here.
Super. Good morning. Bob Cherry, FOP.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'm present.
Good morning. Lisa Robinson, Vanguard Justice. I'm there. If someone could remind me, I'd like to do some follow-up with Vanguard Justice just to make sure that they're getting our invites and we're not overlooking them. Mark
Madam Chair.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Sure, I'll give Lisa a call now.
Okay, super. Thank you for that. Mark Washington. Ray Kelly. I know Ray is on. I saw Ray. Caitlin Young. Trey Murphy. Lydia Walther Rodriguez. Do we yet have a representative from the Civilian Review Board? We'll follow up on that.
I did reach out to them though. So they're waiting to appoint someone.
Okay, I saw that. I knew that you had Tyler Adamson. Okay, and Natasha is on. Adam Abadir. What about Nina Femelis?
Yes, I'm on.
Good morning. Lauren Perez.
She's here. She just can't verbally say that, but she left a note in the message.
Okay. Elise Gillespie.
Elise has changed positions and she's now at the Office of Emergency Management.
Okay. I knew I'd seen that. Marielle Shatina, are you on?
I'm here, thank you.
Super. And I believe I saw Anthony Barksdale, Deputy Mayor Barksdale.
I'm here.
Good morning and welcome.
Thank you.
Yep. Is there anyone that I've missed? I see.
Elena's here from Law.
Okay, great. Good morning, Elena. And I see Haley Tilt.
Yep, I'm here with MOGR.
Yes, great. Good morning. I think with that, I've caught everyone. Is there anyone whose name I've not called that I should be announcing? Okay, so here we go. Since we last met as a group, a lot has happened. Thank you, Nikki Thompson, City Council President Mosby, Natasha Mayhew, our Director of MOGR, the entire MOGR team for navigating the process of getting our basic charter amendment through the city council process. It succeeded in getting through the process and is ready to be signed, I think, by the mayor. I don't know if that's happened yet.
Madam Chair, I can give the date and time for that, and I'll send out an email confirming it. Because I believe in my previous message, I said Thursday, but it's being signed on Wednesday, July 27th at 3:00 p.m. And I'll make sure to send that information for the board members because we're happy to have you all in attendance for that.
Yeah, that'll be a great gathering. We're really proud of that work and just thankful for everyone's participation. Thank you, Commissioner Ray Kelly, for appearing in the hearing room and testifying. I think that was really helpful. So that's the big update from the Charter Review Committee and the progress that's been made. Passing it over to Ashia, because I think she's got some good news also.
Good morning, everyone. So thank you for coming. I'm looking forward to hearing from St. Louis today. I just wanted to give a quick update about the outreach committee last meeting. So we were able to put on a calendar our first outreach meeting, and we wanted to share it with the total committee commission today. So we are looking to have our first meeting on August 25th at the War Memorial building. And I'll continue to work with Lauren and Natasha, who have been very helpful, to offline to make sure that everything is going. But we agreed that we would have some memes, a one pager, and a couple of marketing items by the 5th. And so to share with the group for input so we can start doing outreach to make that meeting successful. And Director Jackson gave over the catering list. So again, I'll work on some of those pieces offline as well. And I think that's it. So we're excited. We're looking to meet on Thursdays, maybe some Wednesdays, to switch it up to make sure everyone can be included. But we're well on our way. So thank you to the committee. Thank you to the staff for your support. And I think that's it.
Great. Well, thank you. And to everyone, thank you for the really good work and the patience and the commitment to move everything forward. Natasha, do you have anything to add in terms of an overview before we hear from our guests?
No, Madam Chair, I think those were all the updates we had.
Okay, great. So, as you all know, we've been wanting to hear from other jurisdictions that have done what we're attempting to do and hear about the different models of local control that are in effect across the country. And very early on, we kind of hyper-focused on St. Louis County, as well as St. Louis, the city of St. Louis, and have had a lot of interest in hearing how your process worked. And I want to thank my colleague, Marielle Shatinia, and again, Natasha, for helping us connect with Brian Ashworth and Michelle Schwerin. They are here this morning. They are both members of the St. Louis County Board of Commissioners, and they have very generously agreed to come here this morning to share just generally the process that they went through in St. Louis County. We want to hear how it's going, what the challenges are, any lessons learned that you'd like to share with us. Take a few questions from the panel, from our board, and then, I did ask Brian if he could stay connected with us and come back for more questions if it's possible. And I think he said yes. But with that, I'd like to hand it over to Brian to introduce himself and Michelle, and then let's get going.
Thank you, Michelle. You want to go first? Thank you, Madam Chair. Sure. Thank you all for inviting us to speak with you all. Brian and I are on the Board of Police Commissioners for St. Louis County Police Department. And this is an appointed position. So we're appointed by the county executive. And after a hearing from our county council, they vote to approve the appointment. Then our St. Louis County Judicial group, all of the judges in the county have, Brian, jump in. I can't remember the exact number of days. Is it 15 or 20?
That's a great question, Michelle. It's one or the other.
It's either 15 or 20 days to veto the appointment. And there are 5 of us on the board. Brian is the chair and I am the vice chair this year. Brian, do you want to jump in and introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. And we'll echo Michelle's appreciation. Thank you very much for reaching out. I am relatively new to the board. I've been on the board now for 14 months. It was great to join such a healthy board, and I say that healthy from how we interact with each other, both challenging and respectfully. Prior to that, I've spent 40 years in the business as a human capitalist for 3 different organizations. So background is primarily what you would call human resources, but includes labor, employment law, and all the things that go along with HR.
I guess I probably also should have added, when I'm not in board related activities, I practice as an attorney here in St. Louis. And my practice consists of tax litigation and white collar defense work. So I bring that legal experience to the board. One thing we did want to address really quickly, we were looking at the list of questions that you presented to us this week in getting ready for preparing our comments to you. And we wanted to make sure that we were, in fact, the correct entity that you did intend to speak with, because the St. Louis County Police Department is a separate police department from St. Louis City. And I apologize if you already know this. I hope you're not offended. But St. Louis City did go from a state-controlled entity to a local-controlled entity, and does have that experience. St. Louis County has not. So Brian and I are happy to share with you our experiences with respect to the St. Louis County Police Department. But as far as the process or best practices or pitfalls of the transition from a state controlled to a local controlled, we can't speak meaningfully to that. So we hope you're not disappointed. We wanted to temper your expectations.
Yeah, and you know, I'm the one that did the list of questions, which is sort of our general questions for all of our guests now and into the future. But really what's most important for us is understanding how the Board of Commissioners function, how they, you know, relate to the police department and, you know, the head of the police department, the intersection with the political landscape, how, you know, the kinds of decisions that the Board of Commissioners is responsible for with respect to policing. And then, of course, always we want to hear about the challenges that you all experience as a board, and best practices that you could share, or insights that you might be able to share as to how you know, a city like Baltimore might work with the Board of Commissioners. We're not, we're just totally open to learning today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michelle, if you don't mind, I'll jump in. So put a little color around both your response and Michelle's tee up. The county was appointed an actual county, a viable legal representative in 1955, and that is when this city-county split, or at least this independence of the county from the city on policing and not sheriffing and those types of things occurred. So to Michelle's comment, this has been in place since 1955, and this includes a county charter, all the things that impact any county, at least as any county as St. Louis has viewed it. Part of that charter in 1955 provided for this independent board of police commissioners. And during the course of that process, the drafters of this charter drafted responsibilities for the board, reporting responsibilities of the board, and smaller details. That was updated, that charter was updated in 1979 and has had a few tweaks since then, probably most recently in 2000. So part of what we were talking about is what can we learn from you as you go through a much more current, much more new version of what you're trying to do with a charter and a police board, right? So we're hoping that this will be mutual learning for us. Yeah, thank you. So in addition to our charter, then we have part of the charter's requirements are that there are ordinances that our county council will pass that also cover at times what the police board of commissioners can do. It pretty much matches exactly what the county charter said, but it goes a little bit further in pieces around compensation and wages and benefits and policies along those lines. So ours has been outlined since 1955. So we'll set that aside for a moment unless you have questions. So to Michelle's comment about we have not gone through a separation. Our city of St. Louis, our counterparts over there did within the last, what, Michelle, 10 years. Both St. Louis and Kansas City and Jackson County, which is in St. Louis, and St. Louis County, which is St. Louis, of course, were under some sort of relationship. The city of Kansas City and the city of St. Louis were under state control. The county never has been. The city of Kansas City is still under state control. The city of St. Louis is no longer under state control, to Michelle's comments. So just put a little context around that. Is it worthwhile to spend just a moment to go through what our charter says our powers and duties or roles and responsibilities are, or is that too much detail at this time?
No, I think I personally would love to hear it. I'm not seeing anyone saying don't talk about it. So, and Natasha is nodding. So yes, that would be really helpful. Thanks. Yes.
Very good. So and Michelle, please jump in where necessary. Absolutely, because you have more experience. Michelle's been on the board for almost 3 years, so is far more experienced than quick structure is far more structure is the department is responsible under the chief of police. There's a substructure underneath him. The chief of police is responsible into the board of police commissioners. That's a direct line reporting responsibility, independent of the county executive and the county council, with the exception of ordinances and budgetary processes, and certainly all other policies, rules, and regulations that apply across all of the county, right? So if there's a passing of a county ordinance that the police department is impacted by that. But the specifics of the police department, the power, the authority, the statutory authority is vested in the Board of Police Commissioners. That includes things like the formulating policies governing operating and conduct of the police department of police, appointing and where necessary, changing the police superintendent or the chief of police, determining and hearing appeals that either the chief made or that may come in from citizens or employees, formulating standards of observance that we have. So separate for just a moment. In this county, we have about 80 additional municipalities. Many of those municipalities contract with the St. Louis County Police Department to provide their policing services. They can contract with another independent police department, or they can have their own police department. So recognize it is a patchwork. Yes, thank you for the smile, Chairwoman. Thank you. That's exactly what the rest of us feel. So navigating that at times has been absolutely complex. In some ways it does well. So our police academy, the city has their police academy, the county police department and those municipalities share a police academy. So there are a lot of things that we do together, but they're also independent police departments. And Michelle, I'm going to pause here. Your experience working with it, what else would you add at this point?
So I think what Brian mentioned are the rights and obligations of the commissioners as articulated by our county charter. In practice, that means we have very close contact with the police chief and executive command staff. In practice, we are the ultimate signers. We vote on every general order that comes out. And that's after extensive work by the department and the various stakeholders in the department. But we work very closely with the department on its review, edits, changes, additions to policy. And I think those are the two primary responsibilities that distinguish us from a typical, what you'd call civilian review board with respect to a police department, although we do function in that appellate capacity by hearing appeals from disciplinary matters, whether it originates with a citizen complaint or within the department. From a regional perspective, the Board of Police Commissioners has a lot of contact with our municipal departments. We have a lot of collaboration with the city as well, because there's a regional perspective to policing. And so while that's not specifically articulated as a task, it is something that we spend time doing because it furthers our ultimate goal, which is effective policing for the benefit of our department and our community.
Okay. So one of the things I was interested in was, is the intersection with the city of St. Louis, given the overall goal of effective policing, and of course I would say, constitutional policing. How do you all navigate the reality that you're separate, but that you have shared interests, shared goals?
Maybe I'll go first with this one. We do it effectively, but perhaps not as effectively as we want to. On some violent crime initiatives, on certain sections where the city and the county are closely connected, both physically and perhaps in other ways, economically, those ways, there is closer cooperation, but there are also some differences in the politics of the two governmental agencies. There are differences in strategy and philosophy around those that we're still working to get our heads around.
Is there yet, I mean, I don't know, whether I don't play poker at all. Because it's all on my face. So here's my question: is there a single decider? Is there, if there's conflict or disagreement, is there someone or something that comes in and says, this is what we're going to do? Or no?
There is not.
There's not. Has it, so in terms of the hiring of the police commissioner and the deciding compensation of a command staff, does that fall into the lane of your board, or does the mayor decide that? Does the mayor not have decision making on that?
So that is set, salaries are set by ordinance. So it is something that the board has been involved in with respect to advising as to where we want the county council to end up. And then it involves the legislative process in determining salaries. So So we have collective bargaining for our officers and our sergeants. And then lieutenants and above salaries, Brian, jump in if I'm butchering this. But are set by the ordinance process.
I think the thing that I would perhaps help there with is their individual salaries are not set, their salary ranges are set. The individual salaries are set by the procedures that are used within the police department, including ours. So there is a salary range for the chief of police, and the board determines the salary of the chief, recognizing the budgetary and financial limitations that are out there, just like any other organization.
Is it the case that and I think the answer is yes, the board is the entity that hires the police commissioner, and it is the board to whom the police commissioner is a direct report?
Yes, to both.
Just out of curiosity, I'm assuming there is a mayor, and what is the role of the mayor with respect to the police department or the board of commissioners?
So we have a county executive who is effectively the same as a mayor. And it's the county executive who appoints the board members to the Board of Police Commissioners. And so it is the executive's appointment and the council member, the legislative body, the council member's approval that puts the 5 of us on the board. And so the concept is to, I guess, take politics out of that determination, the selection of a police chief.
So to put that in context, the reason that, at least as we all understand it now, because the state control of the police departments dated back, what, Michelle, 100 years? It was late 1800s that the state of Missouri took over the city of St. Louis and the city of Kansas City, their police departments. And those dates might be off a little bit, but this is a long time when, at least as we understand it, the people who drafted the county charter took that into mind, and so they separated their direct relationship between the police department and the county executive. That was done intentionally, as we understand it. Now, to put intentional in a different box, the chief is on a direct line responsibility into the board. There is a dotted line, if you use those terms, into the county executive. There is weekly contact between the county executive and the chief that does not include the board. There's weekly contact with the board chair with the chief. And then there's every other week contact with the board chair and or other commissioners with the county executive. So there's constant triangulation and communication going on between the three.
So I've always thought of triangulation as not necessarily a positive in trying to either avoid conflict, resolve conflict, and manage. How does the triangulation work effectively and ideally without conflict in St. Louis County?
So there is, Michelle, I'm reading your face too, right? Processing as you ask the question, Madam Chair. I think we could all say that this isn't a political statement, that triangulation does create complexity. It creates other things in there, but it also provides a sense of checks and balances, right? So the whole purpose of setting up the triangulation was to avoid any conflicts, any undue influence that a county executive could potentially have on the chief of police. And so that triangulation, at least in the founders of our county, believed was a necessary need to keep an independent, viable police department away from the politics of a Democrat or Republican or whoever might be in the chair. The accommodations since then, do they create complexity? Absolutely. My tenure would be in the 14 months. We've not had significant conflict with the county executive or the county council that directly impact the police department. Certainly, there are always fiscal issues that impact the police department, right? Where do we get money to buy new equipment? Where do we, right? How do we pay for the salaries? So those conflicts are there in any organization. This one adds a little bit of need to it because, as we said early on, the direct line of responsibility from the police department to the board, and the board is therefore independent with the exception of all ordinances that impact the entire county and the fiscal responsibility. So we're at the means of the county to pay for a police department. And so those are the primary ways where there could potentially be conflict. Beyond that, the conflict is, if there is any, would be between the the county executive and the police board. And Michelle, again, you've got twice as much experience as I do. I haven't seen that exist, in a way that hasn't been able to be addressed so far. There may be more history there that we're unaware of.
Okay. Very helpful. Any additional sort of general overview before I open up for questions?
I think the only other comment we would make, and again, Michelle was doing most of the research, and then I followed up with some of her ideas on your role and what you're trying to accomplish. I think that without weighing in too heavily, having a checks and balances in place is important, just to create the independence that our county and now we believe needed to have there. However you do that, just make sure there are checks and balances. Maybe it's not a tripartite, maybe it's something else. The other piece, if we understand what you're trying to accomplish, the separation between your city and your county, do not allow that to happen, even if they're different entities. Madam Chair, to your comment, right, there are times where we do struggle with a comprehensive crime prevention strategy because of different philosophies, because of different staffing levels, because of different equipment, because of different funding, all of those things. And I think I personally would almost implore you, do not let too much separation go between your city and your county on policing, but whatever else needs to make sure that you stay connected. And again, that's a personal comment, but it is the biggest issue we confront in our overall community.
Understood.
That's not just policing. Please hear that. That is not just policing.
Yeah, the regional approach to all manner of city municipal challenges is something Baltimore City has had in front of it for a very, very long time, and we continue to sort of link arms with the county, and I'm talking Baltimore County, Howard County, Anne Arundel County, and sometimes even Prince George's County to find sort of regional solutions. And there's some things that fit just so neatly and perfectly for that. Transportation comes to mind. Certainly with the pandemic, we were very linked in terms of healthcare and delivering solutions. Policing is, in my mind, it's a little different in that we're very different communities with different specific challenges. But that's not particularly my lane. I know that Shantae Jackson is on, and she has really worked extremely hard to create a comprehensive crime violence reduction plan, which is, we have to stay focused on it. We have to stay committed to it. And in terms of how we do policing here in the city, we are very separate and from Baltimore County and all of the surrounding counties. That's one of the things that makes us, very unique and distinct from St. Louis County and City. But I hear you, and I appreciate that guidance. I think that's very, very, it's valuable.
And by the way, that comes as both a citizen and a board member, right? Please, I'm wearing my citizen hat as much as I'm wearing my board hat in that.
I know, and we're doing this work. My day. I'm here in my role as the city's chief equity officer. That's my day job, but I live in the city. So I really deeply care about what happens and how we do this. And I think I typically don't dare speak for this whole board, but I think we all come to it with that same, like, we really deeply care about this work and the outcome. If you have other general comments, and now's a good time, and then I'll open it up for questions. I was seeing a few things happening in the chat, things that people are interested in. So want to move it over. And before I do that, I see Senator Corey McCray has joined. So thank you for joining us, Senator McCray. Yeah. As you guys know, I still don't necessarily see hands raised.
Madam Chair, Bob Cherry has his hand raised, and then there is a question in the chat from Adam Adabir.
Okay, so why don't we start with Bob Cherry for the Fraternal Order of Police.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Mayhew and Madam Chair. And thank you, Michelle and Mr. Ashworth, for joining us today. So my question, actually, I think, Mr. Ashworth, you answered this already. You guys have a collective bargaining agreement with officers and sergeants in St. Louis County. Who do you directly negotiate with then? Since they do have a collective bargaining, is it with the county executive, or is it with your 5-member board of commissioners? Or is it together collectively you negotiate with their union or the group that bargains for those officers and sergeants?
Brian, do you want to take this?
Sure. So it's back to that tripartite thing. So the direction of the negotiations is driven by the board through our county counselor's office, the actual negotiator, right? The physical people sitting there. We do have county police representatives, leadership representatives at the table with the FOP when we have those, but it's all constrained by certainly the fiscal responsibility of the county council itself. So a bit of that tripartite piece again. Was that responsive to your question?
No, I mean, definitely the financial side, I see that, because same thing with Baltimore City. At the end of the day, the mayor has to present the budget to the city council for approval. My specifics was more like the negotiations around your policies, your general orders, your pay, discipline. Does that, at the table, it sounds like you have a representative from your legal that is there negotiating for you with the FOP. But that legal comes under the county executive. Am I wrong?
No, you're correct. But there is also a representative from the executive command staff that is representing the department, the police leadership there also. So the legal department is there from a broader perspective across the entire county. The police leadership is there to represent the policies and procedures and all of that aren't covered under full county responsibility. And then there's the FOP representatives.
Thank you, sir.
But to be clear, the board isn't sitting there and the board doesn't sign the agreement.
So your primary responsibility, you appoint the police chief, who in turn selects the executive command. They negotiate with the union, but you have no say in terms of we agree with this agreement or not. That is brought right to the St. Louis County Council.
No, only the fiscal responsibility goes to the council. The rest of it comes back to us.
Okay.
Through the give and the take of the negotiations, right? To Michelle's point, we're not physically sitting there, but we are gauging what is and there isn't going to be agreed to in the collective bargaining agreement.
Thank you both.
Hey folks, Adam Abadir, Mayor's Office of Government Relations. First of all, thank you for taking the time out. This is a very instructive conversation, and your comments have answered a lot of questions that I've had for quite some time. I'm very curious about the general orders that the Board of Commissioners is involved in developing and signing. So broadly speaking, I'm curious, what do those orders look like? Are we talking about kind of like, the nitty-gritty details of, how many police officers are going to be in, say, a particular vehicle on a particular day, or do you guys deal with more policy questions in general, with a specific kind of focus on, we've been looking at many cities across the country And there do seem to be certain cities and counties that, let's say, have guardrails set up on the types of things that civilian-led organizations like boards of commissioners can impose policy-wise on police. And there are certain times where that policy making is reserved solely for the chief executive or for the police leadership themselves. And so I'm curious to know, does the St. Louis County Board of Commissioners, are there guardrails set of the types of general orders you all can give? I hope that makes sense.
Michelle, you want this one?
Sure, I will start. Brian, please jump in if you have something to add. So all of our general orders are published on the website, and I'm happy to send the link to you. And you'll see at the bottom of all of the general orders, they have been voted on by some member. They're signed by some member of the police board, depending on how old they are, is who specifically signed it after a vote of the police board. And so we have a set of general orders, and they range from everything to, this is the uniform that we expect our officers to wear, to here's our pursuit policy, to here's our use of force policy. I mean, it's the whole gambit. And here's our promotional policy. And our department has a standard and a goal of reviewing those policies every X number of months. And they will do so proactively and pull out the policy and say, hey, we haven't looked at this in a while. Let's look at it, make sure it's still the best practices. They'll look nationwide at departments and make sure that what we're doing is still the best policy that we can have. There are also instances where members of the board will say, hey, I think we need to pull this one out and look at it. If something comes up, if an issue arises, if they're looking at a policy and say, I think this was appropriate for a decade ago, but now we really need to think about this. And the department will generally say, okay, let's pull this out and look at it. Here's the suggestion. Let's talk about the pros and the cons of changing that policy. And it begins a discussion. And rewriting policy is a lengthy process in our department. We get a lot of input from various stakeholders. So from the point at which, let's say, one of the members of the board says, hey, I think we should pull this out, it could be several months before we see a proposal. And then it would come up at one of our meetings when it's ready to be reviewed. And then the board will consider it, review it, question it, kick the tires a bit, and then decide whether to vote on it, and then vote on it. Does that help?
That is very helpful. I guess to put the finest point possible on the question, are there certain no-go areas that the Board of Commissioners cannot touch when it comes to policy?
Adam, if your question is regarding police, no.
Got it. Thank you.
Now, I'll add to Michelle's comments with the second half of your question was the interaction with county executive and or county council, that independent state, that triangular representation. When we craft these general orders, they are done substantially from a police perspective, but as Michelle said, they're vetted, they're coordinated across the county to make sure that they aren't in conflict with something else in the county, as an example. Not that others would have police, but maybe we're saying, yes, you're allowed to have facial hair for a male police officer, and maybe our Department of Roads doesn't allow that, right? We would at least be aware of what we're doing so we understand it in context. So it's not done in an absolute vacuum, but it's substantially done by us, for us, without outside influence from a county executive or a county council.
Thank you very much.
In the chat, Madam Chair, Ray Kelly had the next question.
Okay, I've got Ray Kelly and then Haley Tilt. Ray?
I can read the question and respond. The question was about the vocational makeup of the Board of Commissioners. So right now we have four members. We have one vacancy, and Brian has an HR background. I have a legal background. We have another attorney on our board, and he practices in the civil litigation area and also has experience on the, I'm drawing a blank on the actual name, but it's the body that hears ethical and disciplinary issues for attorneys in the state of Missouri. And we have a professor on our board who is the director. I'm probably going to butcher this. It's a very, Brian, do you know? She's the director of something in criminal justice.
I don't.
But I'm embarrassed that I can't remember it. But she's a professor. She practices in the area of criminal justice at UMSL, and she directs one of their PhD programs there.
UMSL is the University of Missouri St. Louis, and she is also keenly involved in their equity and inclusion efforts. And part of the criminal justice, of course, is the connectivity between both of those, which is some of the, reading the next question from Ms. Tilt, some of the qualifications and experiences that we look for. And
Yes. Oh, here it is. I just looked it up. So she's involved in the Social Justice Institute. So it's criminal justice and also social justice.
Okay. Thank you. Haley, do you want to ask your question?
Sure, yeah, thank you. So I'm curious because a lot of the cities that I've been looking at often have even a budget allocated to hire a professional staff consisting of analysts or investigators who can help staff the board and enable them to carry out pretty significant responsibilities for both, reviewing complaints or appeals from officers, and also for reviewing policy. And I know you had mentioned that the board will go back through policy and compare it against best practices in other municipalities. And I'm curious, do you guys have a professional staff? What resources do you have at your disposal to carry out like your very significant and technical responsibilities?
I will say that for all of us, our learning curve has been very steep. I know I've spent countless hours reading and learning, and I wish we had a budget for support staff. We don't. I do know other boards do. We share administrative support with the office of the chief, but that's mostly very administrative support, preparing letters, sending things out, maintaining files, those sorts of things. Brian, do you have thoughts? I mean, I could share my wish list, but we don't have that.
Ms. Tilt, I'll only put a smile on what you see on Michelle's face too, right? As you were asking your question, you probably saw us both on video. Our smiles were, at least mine was, going ear to ear. We would be envious for what you described. If that is a best practice, we love that best practice because, as Michelle said, we don't have anything. We do it on our own. We're with the exception of that very basic administrative stuff, most of it is done on our own. Could you help us influence our county council to fund that? We would like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can help there, but I just, wow, I'm just like kind of blown away by how difficult and how much work that must be.
Back to our question for you, when you eventually work through your best practices and benchmarking and make some decisions, we would love to be on that journey with you. So Madam Chair, your comment about me being available. We'd love for you to stay available for us and share your best practices and findings, because we will definitely leverage those. And a bit of that comes back to, if you heard a bit of our embarrassment on the front end, our original charter is written in 55. It hasn't formally been updated since 1979, at least as we can understand it. So we have some work to do, having administrative support, or at least some sort of an analytical support to do that would be marvelous, and it'd be extraordinarily beneficial to our community and to our citizenry.
Well, first of all, yes, 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 and yes, in terms of sharing what we learn and supporting you by way of sharing knowledge. But what you just said just prompts the question, do you have legal support? I know that you've got lawyers on your board, but do you have a separate law department or Office of Legal Counsel that supports you in your work?
So there is a member of the county counsel's office, the group of attorneys that work for the county, who is assigned to represent the board and answer the board's legal questions and provide legal updates and be a resource to us. And she represents the board and the board's interest, as well as looking out for the department and the department's interest as well.
Anyone else have questions before I want to pivot just for a minute about interacting with community and transparency. But before I do that, are there any other members of the board that have questions? Because I don't want to dominate. Okay, so one of the things that's really important to Baltimore as we go through this process is maintaining compliance with the police consent decree that we've been working with, I want to say, since 2016, 2017, and we will be walking with that document and those that support and mandate for a while. Community interaction, transparency is really important. How do you all, I mean, is that part of your work as a board of commissioners? And if so, how do you carry that out?
Michelle, you want to go first? Do you want me to go first on this one?
I have so many thoughts. I'm trying to organize them so that they're coherent. Brian, do you want to start, and I will pick up.
It is a marvelous question, Madam Chair, that we too are continuing to confront. In fact, just recently we talked about where we physically hold our board meetings, and should we start to move those around to other places in the city, or in the county, not city, in the county, and should we do them at different times? So we've normally been doing them during the morning into the early afternoon, but that might prevent some people from participating in there. All of our board meetings, so back up. Your question is it important to us? Absolutely. Are we good at it? We might be, but we want to be better at that transparency, right? To make sure it's out there. So do we do the basics? Yes, all our board meetings, at least the open sessions, are streamed live. They are taped for future reference. They're out there on our website, so you can go out and pull it up. We have a website that if people want to reach out directly to the board, they can. Michelle, I'll bounce back to you what you all did with the previous chief search, not the most recent one, the previous chief search, where you went out to the community. We have open sessions, the town halls. We still have those in the St. Louis County area, in the different jurisdictions. Board members do attend those, and where needed, will participate. Often they're about crime and crime prevention in my particular neighborhood or my particular community, right? So it's less at the broader level. It's more about what are you doing in my town. So we do have all those communications that are required to be out and open, either from a sunshine law perspective or from our own perspective. We have those out and available. We know there are other things to do. We know there are other best practices out there that we need to learn, and we're continuing to focus on that. Michelle, please clean up the mess I left.
It was a mess, Brian. That was a great overview, and I'll back up a little bit, because what I'm going to talk about predates Brian. So I joined the board in November of 2019, and there was pretty drastic board turnover in that 4 of us were new within a 2-month period, which if I'm going to mention best practices, that would not be one of them. It's an awfully steep learning curve for a lot of people at once. We did it, we managed it. It ended up, there were some innovative ideas that came out of it, but it was a rough transition when I think it could have been smoother. One initiative that the board, as of about January of 20, really wanted to hit the ground running with was community involvement and making sure that the board was a true reflective representative of the St. Louis community. And I will say that our board right now, geographically and with I think experience and background, is a pretty diverse representation of our community. But the goal was back in January, we need to get out there more. And so we have monthly meetings. We said, instead of meeting at 11 o'clock in the police headquarters building, let's get out into the community. And it just so happened at around that time, the current chief announced that he was going to be retiring. And so we engaged in a series of meetings in the north, south, and west areas of the county. East of the county is the city. So it makes sense if you look at a map, and physically went to each segment of the community and had a meeting where we said, you know, we are collecting data. What are you looking for in a chief? And I think those meetings were very well received. And they reinforced our interest in getting out into the community and having meetings in the community in order to have a robust public forum section of our meetings. Unfortunately, COVID hit and you know, best laid plans. So it's something that we've been thinking about for a while and we haven't done due to public safety concerns. But something else that has been nice is moving our meetings to a virtual format. We've reached people that we wouldn't otherwise reach. So now we're trying to balance how do we capture the best of both worlds. We've done other things as well. We have an email address for the police board, and all of our individual email addresses and our data are on the department website, which is something we didn't have before. And those changes were made pretty shortly after I joined the board, so I don't have a good understanding of what things were like before. But I do think we receive more public input now than and I say we, I wasn't part of the board, but the board did, let's say, 5 or 10 years ago. So it's something that we are thinking of, and something that we value. But one thing I have learned is it takes a lot of deliberate effort. You know, you have to be very intentional. Yes, intentional.
Very intentional. Yeah. I had that experience when I served on the city liquor board. All of the meetings began, you know, historically at like 10 o'clock in the morning, which caused a lot of people to not be able to participate, even though the hearings were televised. And so we went to a system where one week a month we would have we'd have night court, night liquor court, and a kind of a lukewarm response. But what was important is that we heard from the community and we offered it, and it was available to people. So, the other topic that I wanted to talk about, just to understand how your board functions, deals with police discipline. Do you all, I think it sounded like you do hear discipline matters, and I would just be interested in hearing a little bit more about how that functions.
Michelle, I'm going to ask you to take this one because you've been leading our effort to do this a little more quickly and a little more objectively.
Yes, so this is one of my initiatives. When I joined the board, we had quite a backlog of outstanding appeals. And there wasn't a very clear process on how we were going to handle them. And we also had rules for hearing appeals that dated back to the 70s. And they were not conducive to resolving disputes. I'll just put it that way. Again, this has been slower than we wanted due to COVID, and some issues with getting the necessary steps in place. But the board in the past year and a half, maybe 2 years, has completely rewritten the rules in a way that I believe is fair to everybody involved, and will hopefully result in disputes being resolved, either through hearing or the pre-hearing process. And so we have a list. We are starting our hearings. I think, Brian, isn't the first one is scheduled for September?
Yes, ma'am.
And then we have once or twice a month all the way through December to try and get some of them through the process. And the way that cases get to us is that there's some investigation, whether it is triggered by a citizen complaint or an internal issue or allegation dealing with some sort of violation of the general orders, improper behavior. And either the citizen who complained or the officer against who discipline is decided challenges the department's determination. So that we have a Bureau of Professional Standards who will conduct an investigation, and it goes up through the deputy chief to the chief with respect to that decision. And when that decision is made, there's a certain number of days that the individual who's unhappy with the result has to appeal. And then all of those appeals come to us. And so then we process them by the rules. And I'm happy to share the link to the rules that we came out with and how we handle that process. They're also on our website.
Okay, thank you.
We know we're running over on time, and we apologize that we're taking more of your time than planned. May I offer two other things that might be helpful, and they're an output of what I was getting at.
Yes.
So this board has crafted priorities, what we believe our 6 priorities are for 2022. And then we have assigned responsibilities. It's loosely assigned, right? We all do all of them, but there is a person on point for our primary responsibilities. And Michelle, as you heard, happens to own a lot of our legal and our justice type of things. Another commissioner handles our learning, our training, and our equity and inclusion. Another commissioner handles our recruiting, retention, and engagement across the group. For example, he helped work with some of our executive command staff to reinitiate our intramurals, right? So we'd stopped doing team building exercises throughout the police, talk to the FOP, talk to the officers and our professional staff, and everybody was all gung-ho. So that would be an example of something he did. And then another commissioner handles a lot of the financial, the direct county relationships and leadership development, executive development, stuff like that. And then the rest of us, we all have response for strategy, for influencing across the county, for the culture, those types of things. So if that helps a little bit, the real important, forgive me for getting into the details, just to add some flavor to it, the net of that was we all don't do everything because there's too much for all of us to do if we're all doing it together. So we've kind of split the dice up a little bit so that we can get more done as long as we remain true to each other and true to what our priorities are. We're very delegative and very trusting of each of us to accomplish something aligned with what we're trying to do with a common set of outcomes. It allows us to get a lot more done.
And Brian, just because we're being recorded, I want to jump in. You mentioned I handle things that are legal related. Just to be very, very clear, I'm not acting as a lawyer. I'm doing things that are in the benefit of the board and are ultimately reviewed by a lawyer who is trained in that area to make sure that she catches me if I step out of line.
Yeah.
Thank you. And you know, that's very fair because the commissioner who handles learning, training, and equity does not actually do that, right? They provide the guidance and are the liaison directly to the department who has responsibility for all of those. The recruiting and retention, right? We have in part of our human resources function, we have recruiters and people who, you know, leadership development that focus on retention. That the commissioner doesn't do that himself or herself. They are the liaison with the department to make that happen. So Michelle, not only for you, but across all of us, that's good cleanup. Thank you. Some glass I left.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I was hearing it as more as an advisory, maybe even an issue spotter, but not an issue solver, and not giving any legal advice or even any, you know, professional advice, because that gets sticky, and I appreciate the clarification. This is really, really helpful. I want to thank you for giving us a little extra time. Much, much appreciated. Before we move to other topics, is there anyone else on the Baltimore board that has questions, suggestions, ideas, you know, anything that seems right to share in this moment?
Madam Chair, I do have a question, and this kind of goes back to when we were talking about their resources and the scope of the work they do. Just some clarification. Is this, in your role on the board, is this a full-time board? You know, is this your day job in your appointment, or is this something that you have those public meetings, you meet quarterly, just to get a scope of how much time and resources that this board puts into the work that you guys do?
You can see both of us smile again, so you know you get a little sensitive note. Michelle, you want to tackle it? You want me to?
Well, so I'll preface this by saying I have heard from multiple different areas of our department and multiple different levels of our department that the board, as we have it right now, is the most active board they can remember ever interacting with. So the four of us are probably more hands-on than prior boards, which I think is a good thing, because in order for us to be able to make decisions, for example, on general orders or the direction of the department or priorities that we would like the chief to focus on, we have to know all about the department. And so each of us, I think, has made the decision to spend a lot of time on the board, and I think that has made it a better board. I think it would be possible to show up to monthly meetings and maybe spend a couple of hours before each meeting, and you could probably get by not reaching your fiduciary duty as a board member. But each of us spend a significantly more higher level of time. It's a bigger commitment than that. That being said, I'm employed full-time elsewhere. I have my own law firm, and so I'm doing this on top of that, as are our other two board members who are still working.
I would say the exact same thing, which is it is substantially a volunteer board. There is some fee, an annual fee that gets paid out to those of us who want to accept it. That basically covers our costs for attending board meetings and things along those lines. But it is substantially volunteer. It's not designed to be full-time, but as you heard Commissioner Schwerin say, it could easily be full-time. Perhaps back to that, this was written in 1955, and so 67 years ago, it probably made sense that you could do it a few hours a day, a few hours a week, a few hours a month. That's not the case anymore.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
For a refresh, sounds like, to put it mildly. Yeah.
Put it mildly.
Okay. Well, I guess just a last question from me. If there is ever an incident of asserted police violence, excessive force, that results in serious personal injury or even death, there's a lot of community response and reaction, questions of liability and compensation, which is, we've seen that play out across the country. We've certainly experienced that in Baltimore. How would the board respond to such an incident? What would the role of the board be in trying to untwist and resolve and address and communicate about an incident like that?
Michelle, I might jump in right now. I'm not sure, Madam Chair. We had that obviously incident occur in 2014 here in St. Louis. You'll know it is the Ferguson and the Michael Brown situation. We have access to board members who were around at that time. I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer your question right now. Michelle?
I'm also not sure. I do know I do know when we've had critical incidents, not to the extent that you're describing right now, but we have had critical incidents while I've been on the board. And the chief does connect with board members. But I'm sort of thinking out loud, which is not a good thing to do in a meeting. I mean, as board members, we would have to separate how the department responds as a policy and how the department responds with respect to that individual, because the board does wear two hats. One is involved in the policy and the direction of the department, and the other is with respect to any sort of potential disciplinary matter, in which case we would want to stay away from that until and unless it reaches the appellate level. And that is something that we as a board have talked about, being very deliberate with, which area we are acting in as the board.
Understood.
Charles, I say thank you for your question. It has prompted a note to say, go back and understand what we did in 2014, both as a leadership group, as a board, and use the best practice approach. Was that what we should have done? What else should we have done? So you've prompted a thought to make sure this board is at least planful around what such situation would do and how we would appropriately respond.
Thank you for that. And I was, that's the, what I described as the scenario that we all hope and pray never happens. But, as we navigate life, we know that it is likely. And I was just curious to how, as a board, as different from, a mayor and a police commissioner and a, city council, how those things would be handled. So yeah. So now I'm thinking about it a little bit more as well.
Well, my smile to your point is we just at our board meeting this month went through with our executive leadership team, our executive command staff, do we have plans? Do we have decision-making rights? Do we have training to handle things such as a school shooting or a hostage situation, right? We know we have plans, but how do those plans actually come to life? We didn't ask that question about ourselves. We asked that about our department. So what you said, my smile is an embarrassed smile. We should have asked it about ourselves too.
Well, this is one of the benefits of this conversation, one of the unplanned benefits. And of course, this is not the purpose of the call, but as we've seen from the Uvalde, Texas, situation, we all need to be thinking about how we collaborate with different law enforcement agencies and command staff, and how decisions get made in the most critical moments. But that's not for today. I am not seeing any raised hands. I'm not seeing any fresh comment in the chat. I see information's been dropped in. So I just want to thank you, Michelle and Brian. This has been very, very enlightening and informative. We appreciate you giving us all the time, and you've given us a lot to think about as we are entering a new phase of our process of really, really doing deep dives into what's happening, across the country. And I'm pretty sure I speak for the entire board in saying, sincere thank you for giving us the time, and just wishing you well as you do this really, really, really incredibly hard work. And the last thing I wish you is abundant funding as you move forward in doing the work. So.
We will reciprocate by wishing you the best on funding. We know how municipal organizations work, and Michelle is really very capable of responding on her own. So I'm not going to try to speak for both of us. I'll thank you for what you all are doing, and I mean that sincerely, for your community, for your citizens, and for your police department. So, while we are independent of the police department itself, right, we're in it, but we're supposed to be independent oversight. There's no doubt all the police departments need some support right now in ways that it may not even know, such as oversight, right? That is always helpful. And secondly, I compliment you on your approach, your research-driven, your best, your due diligence, your best practices benchmarking approach to coming up with what is the current best practice there, and trying to take it to the next level as you set your policies, your procedures, your structures, your relationships, whatever it might be. Highly complimentary. The business side of me is coming out to say, good for you. Well done.
Well, thank you. And, but my team here is kind of quiet today, but believe me, everybody that's part of this board is here for a reason, and we're holding each other accountable. And there's a lot of, oh my gosh, the thought and the caring in the Baltimore City's Local Control Advisory Board is tremendous. And frankly, they wouldn't have it any other way except that we do this research. So thank you very much.
Michelle and I are deeply grateful. We look forward to our ongoing conversations.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good luck.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Asking our board to stay on, and let's just get a general sense. Before if anyone has anything, insight or thoughts to share about the conversation we just had, now's a good time. Not obligated, but what do you think?
That was great. Really appreciated their frankness, their candor. Absolutely consider that a model moving forward for how we talk to other cities about this work. I'm excellent.
I echo Adam. I think it's definitely a great conversation for us to structure future conversations. Now, I don't see that as a model for us, but that's a whole nother conversation. But I did appreciate the conversation.
Great, thank you. I mean, that's kind of where we are, is we're, my thinking is we're kind of in discovery mode. This is not a litigation matter. We're not adverse to one another, but the best decisions are made with the most abundant information that we can get. And we're going to continue to seek it and to bring it here so that when the time comes, and it will come, for us to make a decision about what's best for Baltimore, we're fully and well informed. To that end, Bob Cherry, God bless you, Bob, for your patience. He too has connected with someone from, I want to say it's St. Louis City, who is willing to come talk with us. We tried to get them a couple weeks ago. There's this little thing called the 4th of July holiday that really got in the way, but we still are wanting to find a date to bring that person back in to talk with us. Bob, if you want to talk a little bit about that person, that would be helpful. I know that we're not meeting on July 29. We are meeting, I want to say August 5th. So Bob?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I'll be quick because I know everyone wants to get going. Jeff Rorter is the executive director. And for those of you, I'm repeating myself because Dana and Natasha, I think we spoke about this a few weeks ago. Jeff Rorter is the executive director for the St. Louis Police Officers Association. He has a good relationship with the police commissioner's chief of staff. So we're going to try to get both Jeff and the St. Louis Police Commissioner's chief of staff to speak with us. As the chairwoman said, part of the problem has been we've been canceling some meetings. Jeff is actually running for a state senate, so he's involved in an election for the general in November. Fridays, he said, are going to be kind of tough, Madam Chair and Natasha. We may be able to move him and the chief of staff to maybe like a Tuesday or a Wednesday and just let the board know. Okay. So I'm still working with both of them to get a date, and I'll communicate directly with you, Natasha, and you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Yeah, we'll work it out. And I mean, you guys might remember my saying that whenever we can get, a special guest to give us the time to come talk to us, we'll take them whenever we can get them. And it'll be for us to flex and adjust our schedules. We're just that hungry for the knowledge and understanding that we don't always control our guests. We got to work with them. So I know that we were also trying to get someone from Austin, someone from, I want to say Seattle, and I don't know, there's 2 or 3, 4 other jurisdictions we're working on.
Yeah, Madam Chair. And in addition, I had also reached out to the Director of Public Safety in St. Louis City, which I believe is, I don't know if it's apples to oranges or apples to apples, but maybe similar to our Deputy Mayor of Public Safety, but had met him at a conference and I also expressed the interest in. So if we have an all things St. Louis City Day, we could work that around, or if schedules don't allow, have him at another day. And then similarly, our intern Haley Tilt has had some conversations, and I'm forgetting exactly off the top of our heads, but with an academic and an activist who have been participating in the work that's currently going on in Chicago as they're in the process of restructuring their probably more like police oversight, to say a better term than local control, since it's not a transfer from the state to the local, but changing their process for how things are overseen there. And so we thought it would be good to have them also present to the board to talk about what's happening in that city as well.
And in fact, they would both be available they would be available on August 5th, but would prefer an afternoon time if that's possible. And Director Moore, I sent you an email with a couple of times that they proposed.
Okay. I will find it. I can just say selfishly that Friday afternoons in August are not my favorite time to be on Zoom calls, but I'll do it. If they had, I'll do it. I mean, and I, yeah, we'll work through it. For sure. Any other insights, thoughts? Okay. Thank you all for being here. This is probably the longest meeting that we've had. It was, I think, fairly chunky. There was a lot of information shared, and I really, really appreciate it. I don't see that, I don't know whether she's still on or not, Mary Alshatinia, but just want to say thank you again for bringing Brian and Michelle to us. It was very helpful. Have a great weekend, everyone. Look out for the meeting invite on August 5th. I believe we're having, the outreach committee is going to meet, Ashia, did you say on Thursday of next week?
No, I'm sorry. We're not gonna, as of now, we're not. I'm gonna work with Natasha and Lauren offline.
Okay.
What I was saying is that after the 25th of August, it's possible that we'll be meeting in person weekly on Thursdays.
Okay, understood. In person. Yay. Okay, great. All righty. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a super great weekend. Stay safe. Keep watching those numbers changing. Oh my gosh, I keep hitting refresh on the state Board of Elections, just anxiously looking to see what's going to happen with our state and local electeds. Anyway, have a great weekend.
Thank you. Everyone have a great
All right.
weekend.
Be well.
Everyone stay cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, please hydrate, hydrate.
Thank you, team.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.